Karolina, welcome to Mastering You. How are we today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
No, not at all. I was just saying that it's been a good sort of 40, 50 episodes since we've actually really got deep into this topic, and such an important one. So we're talking about alcohol. I've never actually heard of an alcohol-free life coach before. I didn't know that was a thing, but as soon as I read it, I totally understood that. I can imagine there's quite a big call for that.
It is. And I love this topic. And yet, like when we say it's a little taboo, right? Because I think in our society, we've really been groomed to see alcohol is very normalized, like it's very much embedded in our culture. And the only type of people who we usually hear about quitting drinking or not drinking are people who really hit it way too hard and have very serious consequences in their life. And I think that really robs us, people who are healthy, mindful, want to really optimize our lives, of actually making sense and reevaluating the role of alcohol in our lives, regardless of the consumption, if that makes sense, regardless of the quantity, because someone could be just very intuitive, in tune with their body, and being like, you know what, 2 glasses of wine ain't serving me. It's not helping my sleep. I feel crappy the next day. It's not helping me get my best PR, and reevaluate it on those terms. So it's just really like, it's just this permission. I think this new alcohol-free movement is to give anyone permission to decide whether or not alcohol is serving them. And it doesn't have to be, I quit forever. It's just, let me take a break and see what happens.
Yeah, you mentioned the alcohol-free movement, and it does feel like there is a real movement going on now. I don't know if it's partly because I'm for me personally, like there's more self-awareness around that, and obviously when you start to look at things like certain non-alcoholic drinks, obviously you start to get targeted more online with those types, and like you kind of feel like you're an alcoholic sometimes when you get bombarded so much with that. But it does feel like, it feels like there is a movement. There's more chat around it. Probably needs to be more to come, because like you said, it is so embedded in our culture, isn't it? And the previous episode that we did have it's actually one of our sponsors, Sarah, but she was very open, and she brought up the topic of how, particularly in England and the UK, we have our pubs and it's almost part of our institution, the public house, and it's part of what we're almost all about. And doesn't necessarily mean it's for the best, but I think acknowledging that is so crucial. How did you get to this point where you felt like this is a topic that needed to be spoken more about, and there needs to be more awareness about?
Yeah, of course. So based on completely my own personal transformation, and I was someone, I think when we talk about someone who ditches alcohol, we assume like, oh, it must have been really bad, right? But I would be all very honest with you. Like, I drank way too much when I was in college and grad school. I had no boundaries around alcohol. I partied a lot, drinking almost every day, just not very healthy in any other ways. I wasn't doing any good stuff for myself, but I was a kid, whatever. It was my rite of passage back then. But as I get older, I'm like getting really a lot more responsible. I also start really getting into health and wellness and living a more mindful lifestyle. So by the time I'm in my late 20s and turning 30 years old, I live a very healthy lifestyle, Monday through Thursday, right? I'm eating very well. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to my yoga class. I'm meditating, all those things. And then the weekend comes and I drink. I drink either I'm at home with just relaxing with some Netflix and wine. I go out for sushi night, game night, dinner night. I'm not going to the bar until like 2 a.m. It's very much this adult drinking. And I wake up every single Monday morning feeling horrible. Not only am I physically like just not feeling my best, but I'm almost like have this dark cloud of energy following me around. I'm just like, oh, I was so like healthy. And I feel like I just bulldozed all that healthy progress. And now I just feel like I'm back -5 steps from square zero, if that makes sense. And I would wake up every Monday like that. And I would just look around me and be like, I don't understand them. Everyone's doing the same thing I'm doing. And I'd want to not drink for a while. And so I would try to maybe, I would drink not for the week. And so I'd start to slowly feel better throughout the week. My energy would go back up, and then it'd be Friday and I would drink again. And I lived this cyclical life for just so many years. And I honestly didn't think I had any other options. I didn't think that, you know, when I heard about sobriety, right? I heard about recovery, I heard about AA, I heard about rehab. And honestly, I was drinking less year after year, not more, right? Because I was honestly also keeping track of it. I was really wanting to make it a smaller part of my life. That also gave me a lot of mental anguish. It was always these rules, you know, okay, only 2 drinks tonight, or, oh, well, I wasn't going to drink tonight, but they invited me out, but I have that presentation tomorrow. Like, it was this constant chatter in my brain. And I don't think I have permission to change, because I don't think I qualify as an alcoholic, and I don't want to either, right? I don't want to assume that label just because I want to make a change here. But I finally had a dry January, which started in the UK. And that to me was like this light bulb moment. I was like, oh, I can take a break and it doesn't have to mean anything about me. I don't have to go ring to everyone to say I have a problem. And that break really opens my eyes to how amazing my body and my mind feel without alcohol. So I have an amazing month. I'm sleeping very well. I'm feeling a lot more energy. I'm taking better care of myself. And it's also this like pride that I'm getting, like every single day I'm committing to the promises I made and I'm not breaking them. And I'm just like, wow, I'm really doing this. It just felt so amazing. February comes along, and with my social calendar, and I just don't really believe I can keep up with this alcohol-free thing. I just still assume a normal adult has to drink. So I drink a few times that February, and the contrast is just so apparent. You know, just 1 or 2 drinks completely ruins my sleep, makes me feel fuzzy. I can't journal at night when I'm buzzed. You know, I like having this evening routine. A few drinks even too, like completely ruin my mood. So I always associated drinking with like a spike of happiness, but it actually would be like this quick buzz, right? And then after that, my mood would actually drop way lower than before I had that drink. I got cranky, frustrated, easily impatient. I would even start little fights with my husband. And I was like, oh my gosh, in January, I was euphoric. I was feeling great. I was really happy. Like, drinking is not what I thought it was. And so I decided to take another break at that moment. And that break basically carried me to 4 years later. So I'm now 4 years alcohol free. And I would have to say that every day and week that followed that decision literally got better and better and better. Not only did my health vastly improve, and we can talk a little bit about the science behind why that is, but really I developed these positive beliefs about myself. It was like, if I could do this, which kind of felt like my Achilles heels for so long, if I could do this, what else could I do? And that really propelled me to go out and do the things I never thought were possible for me, to launch a business, to like write a book, to become a coach, to leave my day job, to do all these incredible things. Again, I believed before were pipe dreams for me. And so it's really given me the confidence to believe anything is possible. And I'm not an anomaly in that sense. Like, most of my clients have the exact same transformations. They go after long held dreams or goals that they just didn't really think were realities in their life because of this intense confidence and other, compounding effects of leaving behind the alcohol.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the science, because I think the science is really important. I think that's one of the things that can help people in any aspect of their health and wellness, is just more of an understanding about what's actually going on in the mind and the body when you're, engaged in certain behaviors. Because let's face it, knowledge is power, and the decisions that we make are based on the experience and knowledge that we have. And it's that whole Tony Robbins quote, isn't it? When, ultimately all of our decisions are based on pain and pleasure. And, if you're making a certain decision that you most likely maybe want to do less of, if it is drinking alcohol, there's clearly less pleasure associated to doing something else, whether it be writing that book or pursuing that career, and etc. So I think it's good to get into the science, get into the weeds a little bit. Where would you say best to start, Karolina?
Yeah. So very interesting is that like the body rebalances really fast, I think, when you take a break from alcohol, and a lot of different internal systems change really fast. And this is like based on studies. But first of all, like sleep, I think is just tremendous, because I think a lot of us start getting older. We start feeling like less energy throughout the day. We're just like almost like zombies. And I work with a lot of women who literally just assume this is just what it feels like to get older. And they're not recognizing that alcohol is like actually a huge culprit. So they've studied that just one drink actually will reduce your REM sleep cycles. We have around 5 to 6 each night to feel really nourished, rested, process our memories. REM sleep is really important for us. And even just one drink can reduce our REM sleep cycles down to just 1 or 2. So you could still be like a sleep fanatic and clocking in your 8 hours, but you're not getting the nourishing sleep your brain needs. And so right away, like you start to rebalance that sleep cycle, that circadian rhythm, and start to get much more deep, nourishing sleep. And so you wake up like obviously with more energy. Your body's also not detoxing alcohol. So alcohol is, by all accounts, a poison. Technically, it's a toxin. Your body has to kind of work overtime to detoxify it. And so your body's not busy doing that. It really can rest at night instead of doing that. So that also contributes to the higher energy. Some incredible things happen, you know, like when it comes to like our, when we're really thinking about longevity, our heart health, for example, or cancer risks or something like that, you know, I think you're like, we eat well. We don't eat kale because we all love the flavor of it. Like we eat well because we want to live a long quality of life, right? So alcohol does a number of things that really actually heighten our risk of cancer. So for women, for example, 2 drinks a week increases cancer risk by 20%. And same thing with heart disease. It's been a long time, this myth that a glass of wine a day is good for your heart. And it's now been completely debunked that was actually based on really badly designed studies. And now once those are removed, there's really no correlation at all. And any amount of alcohol is actually related to more risk because it actually increases your heart rate. It produces inflammation in your body and it heightens your blood pressure. So I don't want to do the scare tactics. I actually want to share about the cool stuff that happens when you remove it. Just a month off has been proven to rapidly reduce blood pressure, rapidly reduce your heart rate, rapidly reduce also cholesterol. Now, I think that's fascinating because I struggled with high cholesterol when I was younger as a drinker. And I read a lot of books. No one was ever talking about the impact of alcohol on your cholesterol levels. And I'm not sure what it's like in the UK, but in the US, up to 2/3 of adults have high cholesterol. A lot of people are on drugs, statins, right? Like this is a big problem. And so alcohol, like obviously doesn't have saturated fat in it or cholesterol in it, but it really does increase inflammation. And so they've studied in just 5 weeks off that the average participants will lose about 20 points off their cholesterol. Now, me personally, I lost 51 points. So I went from like, I think the numbers are a little different from the UK to the US, how we measure it, but I lost 50 points. From a risk point, you know, to like a no risk at all, like your cholesterol is great kind of a thing. I was like, oh my gosh, I wish more people knew this, because like if you actually took all these effects that a break from alcohol could do and put it in a pill, like pharmaceutical companies would make billions. And it doesn't stop there. Your liver fat will start to reduce within just a month off alcohol. So up to 20% of your liver fat will start like healing. The cancer markers in your blood also start like reducing, which is incredible, right? And then also they've proven that the gray matter can grow. So they've studied that even moderate drinkers, like compared to non-drinkers, have smaller brains. And so just a month off will get that to regrow. So, I mean, that's kind of like internally, right? But what does it feel like physically? Like you feel amazing, literally, you feel amazing. And one other crucial thing to recognize, alcohol does like have this spike of dopamine in our brain when we drink it. So there is that buzz associated with drinking. We think it feels good, right? But they've studied it and they found that that buzz quickly crashes. So our dopamine levels actually go a lot lower. And because our brain is used to these really high spikes of dopamine, our brain actually gets really desensitized to then other more naturally occurring sources of dopamine or joy. At the same time, the receptors that like capture the neurotransmitter of dopamine actually start to retract in drinkers' brains because it's just too much of it. And at the same time, our serotonin and GABA levels start going down. So what does this mean? And this is exactly how it played out in my life. Your life is kind of like apathetic. Everything's just whatever. And then when I get to go out and drink, that's the fun part. And then everything else goes down to feeling pretty crappy. Same thing. Alcohol also induces the release of stress hormones in your body, cortisol, adrenaline, and endorphin, which make you feel really low. So that's how it felt as a drinker. It was like my life was pretty apathetic.
Testosterone as well.
Yes, exactly. So it had these high spikes maybe on Friday night, but then I went back to feeling low. So when you take out alcohol, all of a sudden your natural neurochemistry rebalances. And so like your daily state starts to have a lot more joy. Like the most mundane things, I remember looking at clouds or like having a little dance party with my dog. I was seriously so giddy. It felt like I was falling in love. So not only is your physical energy, you feel a lot better. When you feel better, you're more motivated to obviously treat your body better, I think as well. You know, you're not looking for fast food to like mop up a boozy night the night before. but your mental state actually vastly improves. And this has been studied not just for heavy drinkers, just for any drinker. Like, take a break, see what happens. And that's why I love sharing this message, because again, it's not about quitting forever. I think most of us, since we've started drinking as teenagers and then carry on the habit for the rest of our lives, we don't even know what it feels like to not have alcohol.
I was just going to say that actually, that reminds me of something that comes up a lot with working and coaching with people into better health and fitness is you kind of don't know what you don't know. And if you've been involved in a certain behavior for many years, that becomes the norm. That becomes what you're conditioned to. And I always remember we had a couple who lost about 8 or 9 stone with us in the space of like 12, 16 weeks. Many years ago, I did a workshop seminar and interviewed them sort of live with an audience. And the guy said something that I always remember, which is I never realized how crap I felt until I started feeling good, because they, as he put it, they grew old together, but they grew bigger together. And his lifestyle would be sort of, not so good in terms of eating, getting home from work, being so tired after work, just slump on the sofa, go to sleep, go back to work. And then started engaging in our program, in our nutrition, in our fitness. He'd come home from work, he'd go into the garden, he'd have all this energy, and he just didn't realize that your body has the capacity or capability to even be able to access that amount of energy. And I think what you're saying is the same with alcohol. If it's a regular thing, and you kind of, even if you're telling yourself, oh, it's only a couple of drinks here or a couple of drinks there, but actually, like you say, having just even giving it a shot, whether it be, what sort of duration do you generally tell people that when they are going to first start to feel the real benefits? Are we talking a matter of days, weeks, month? What there must be like a timeline of when it really kicks in, those benefits, is there?
Yeah, for sure. And like in my book, I have a 2-month plan, for example. So it's like an 8-week plan. And by then you really should experience all the benefits for sure. But it's actually kind of unique depending on someone's drinking habit. So there's actually like a period of time right when you take the break that it actually might feel a little funky, right? Like you might be a little bit more tired.
Yeah.
Your body's like really kind of rebalancing, probably like any shock to a diet. The same thing is like, this is
like
weird,
reducing
right?
sugar or something. Yeah.
Right. So it can take a minute. Like some people think it takes a week, some people it's like 2 weeks, but once you get past that and just know, like really internally, your body's really healing. So just treat it with some grace, some compassion, rest a little bit more than you need to. Usually by a month off, like people are feeling really, really good. And I think then what happens after a month is really some of the more mental benefits, like not just the physical ones, but really just like, wow, like if I could do this, what else could I do? Or, like I always believe like when you're alcohol free or when you're not drinking, it takes a lot of courage. You know what I mean? Like not only is it ingrained in our society, but we have this pressure. It's like this social pressure that we always have to drink. And so when you go alcohol free, you start learning how to order a mocktail. It takes courage to do that. You have to tell your friends, you have to tell your family. All of those things build a lot of courage. And it's like that courage you're building in this one respect, you'll be surprised how it spills over into other areas of your life for other things that you really want, maybe asking for the raise or launching your own business and stuff like that. So that's where like past the 2-month mark is really where like these cool, like you would think completely unrelated life things start happening to people. But it really, I mean, your sense of creativity and intuition, like alcohol technically is an anesthetic. It actually numbs and slows down our central nervous system. And so it very much creates a disconnect with our thinking and our higher self thinking, our critical, our thinking and stuff like that. So when you remove it, people think a lot of times I have a stressful day, I just want to zone out. But when you're numbing the bad, you're also numbing the good, So when you remove that completely, like, I think it's just creates a real deeper channel with your thinking, with your higher self, with your ability to be creative or pursue new ideas. And the time you get back actually gets you hungry to discover new passions, like if you're used to going out every Friday or Saturday night to a pub or just sitting at home with some wine, you got to rediscover what fun means to you. And you have to learn what that is. And I have my clients actually get out there and try new activities just to have fun and see what it is. But I think alcohol actually robs us of knowing what's really fun for us because it tricks our brain, right? It's just like a chemical reaction going on up there. It feels fun. It's not real, right? It's not real. It, like any other drug isn't real either. Like that's not real fun. We have to be an active co-creator in our fun. We have to actually do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And think about when we were kids, we would roller skate and play in trees and put on a play and write poems and, go bike riding. Like we did so much stuff as kids to have fun. And in adults, it's like we completely lose that connection with finding our own joy. It's like we just become these passive zombies, like, okay, I'll just drink and watch some TV. Not vilifying everything, right? But it's like when you live your life based on that, you're not getting that hit of passion that you need.
Yeah, we've just launched a course, LPT, one of our first online courses actually for quite a number of years, and it's called the Weight Loss Mindset, and it's nothing to do with nutrition really and diet and exercise. It's all around building the mindset tools to navigate a healthy life. And one of the things that we go over or into is the neuroscience and what's happening in the brain, and basically explaining how the brain works in terms of, its first primary goal is always survival. And, if you have had a really crappy week or you've had an argument with your spouse or your boss, it's not a surprise that sometimes that your natural inclination is to want to dumb down that pain. And, one thing we can't deny is alcohol is fantastic for that. It makes us literally unconscious. So is it going to help us dumb down any sort of pain in the moment? Yes. Is that going to be a good thing to do, consistently, or is that going to feel good the next day? Probably not. And, but it's kind of, we're sort of trying to teach people that you're not that person, because people can identify with themselves as, oh, I am this person. And ultimately it's just an understanding that your brain is wired to survive and not thrive. But I think what you're basically teaching people is how to choose the thrive option instead of the survival option.
Yes, absolutely. And I think rediscovering what lights you up, like I have to say, like I thought my drinking was very, normal, typical for my age, whatever. I love to drink on the weekends. And it was like TGIF all the time. Like I cannot wait for Friday, right? My week was a snooze. I cannot wait to get to that weekend, to get to the highlight of my life. And what I didn't really recognize was that back then I was bored. I was so bored. I was restless. I was unfulfilled with my life. I was unfulfilled with my week. And it actually, honestly, to me, that meant a career change. And it meant that I wasn't doing what I was passionate about. I wasn't doing what gave me a sense of meaning or purpose. And so I was able to really listen to that intuition to really go find fulfillment in my everyday. And now I can honestly say I get high every day. I do, right? Like based on just my life, the life I've created now. I'm not fast forward to this better reward that I get on the weekends. I get to create that every single day. Doesn't mean I have the best days ever. I'm just saying, like, I do what I love now. And so finding that sense of fulfillment and meaning, I think, can be really important, because then those immediate gratifications, they just stop resonating so much with us. Like we find something so much deeper. And, I think it's so great that you point out that like this beautiful course of really learning how to design your life and having a mindset that really drives you forward. Because as you said earlier, the Tony Robbins thing with like, we always are moving towards pain or pleasure, So before, for me, pleasure used to be like a hit of dopamine on the weekend with some wine, and pain used to be this deprivation, this idea that I couldn't drink. They've completely swapped in my brain, right? To me now, pleasure is waking up every morning feeling amazing. It's waking up with my full integrity. It's waking up knowing that I'm working on my biggest dreams every single day. And I link pain to doing something just to fit in. I link pain to hangovers. I link pain to, drinking a toxic beverage that just isn't serving me. Like, so I've completely switched it in my brain, which has made it sustainable. It's made it so that I don't think I can't drink. I just don't want to drink.
What's your opinion on non-alcoholic drinks that are branded non-alcoholic? Because I've got a mixed bag of ideas around them. I think there's both positives and negatives. In my opinion, I think the positives are they seem to be getting better. That doesn't necessarily mean that particularly that they're all that healthy. But then the negative is sometimes I feel like there could be somewhat a gateway to going back to drinking again. And some of my favorite non-alcoholic drinks aren't really, they're not labeled or branded as non-alcoholic. It's just like drinking water. You wouldn't call it water a non-alcoholic drink. Obviously it is, but you don't buy a bottle of water and it says non-alcoholic. But yeah, I just wondered what your take on that is.
Yeah. So I love them in the sense that I think they're really creating a new culture out there, so it's like for so long, like, I know there's pub culture in the UK. I'm in San Diego, so we've got the craft beer culture here for so long. And even still in many places today, I could go somewhere and literally have nothing to drink other than tap water. Like they have nothing on the menu that's not non-alcoholic, which to me is kind of crazy. Like there's drivers, there's pregnant women, there's all these people who don't drink for certain reasons. Like your menu has nothing to drink, right? So I think it's changing culture in a way that is like a lot more inclusive, a lot more just recognizing the fact that like alcohol does not have to be the linchpin of a social occasion, right? And so one, I think that they're a really great substitute at first. So when you're, first trying to change, like you don't have to completely change this habit, right? If you're used to pouring yourself a drink at 5 p.m. or 7 p.m. or whatever, get a drink, get any drink then, and find one that you love. And I love how you make this distinction because yes, there's drinks that are literally trying to mimic the flavor of alcohol, whether it's non-alcoholic beer or wine or spirit. And then there's these other concoctions like a matcha latte or, just a coconut water, or, here we have a drink called Spindrift which is just a bit of fruit puree with sparkling water, very low sugar. It's just the fruit, right? Okay. So good, right?
Have you heard of Three Spirits brand? The Three Spirits
I've heard
brand?
of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So like, I always tell my clients, find a drink you love, whether it's actually non-alcoholic beer or wine, doesn't matter, or just like coconut water. I think that what we want at the end of the day is to feel like we have a ritual that like says it's okay to relax now. It's okay to decompress. And alcohol, it's so funny. They have these studies that show they put brain nodes basically on these participants who were sitting down at a restaurant and they were measuring their brain waves. So their brain waves are pretty scattered, pretty chaotic. And then everyone orders a drink. And all of a sudden, all of their brain waves like really smooth out. Now, here's the thing. They didn't actually drink the drink yet. They just ordered it, right? So our brain has this sense of anticipation of like, ooh, I'm going to get to relax pretty soon, right? And it already starts relaxing. I think that a non-alcoholic beverage can honestly give you the same placebo effect of like, now this is my time. I get to just relax. I get to socialize. I get to have fun. Whatever's in that glass, I think doesn't matter as long as it just doesn't have ethanol in it. So I would experiment. I would try them. If you find something that works for you, go for it and be really creative with it. So like, for example, like I said, a grapefruit juice, for example, with some sparkling water is like a great thing to try. Kombuchas are out there, coconut water, normal water, sparkling water, right? So there's just a lot of different options. But I think when you have something that, it feels like a little bit of a treat, it's not just water, maybe you drink them more at first. And that's what I really find is my clients will drink these drinks more often at first. And then it just kind of peters off. You know what I mean? Like I will have water most of the time with my dinners. And then maybe on a Friday night, I'm like, okay, let's do a kombucha tonight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something I'm like, I have to have this every night. So
yeah, I think that it's almost a bit like, when people started to really understand the dangers of smoking and they started, with these, with the electric seats and stuff like that. And then they kind of got bored of that. And then it's like, well, I realized I just don't really need this anymore. Kind of similar, isn't it? And I think there's a lot to be said for quenching your thirst as well, because a lot of people, they will, ultimately that first drink is a lot of people don't hydrate enough, quite honestly. I mean, we find this one of our key habits on our 6-week kickstart is very simple. It's getting your 2-3 liters of water in a day. Just such a simple thing. But if you've been at work all day, you've been living off of caffeine, you're being more dehydrated, you're stimulating your body all day long with potentially caffeine and stimulants or Coke or Monster drink or whatever it is, Red Bull. It's no surprise that at the end of the day, you're going to want to have a beer or a wine or something that's going to bring you back down. And people living on this kind of up and down stimulants and then bringing it down, stimulants, then bringing it down. So having like a non-alcoholic drink just to kind of almost like a pattern interrupt for your brain, just to say, oh, actually, because I found that myself in the past when I've, let's face it, sometimes we drink through stress or whatever. But I've often just tested myself and like, okay, I sort of coach myself through it. And I say, well, I could quite fancy having a drink right now. But having that self-awareness to know that, yeah, but I feel like I want it because of this emotional response to this problem, not because I just want to really enjoy that drink. And having that key, being able to distinguish those. And so I'll give myself permission to say, okay, well, I probably will still have the drink, but let's try this first. And I'll maybe have one of my favorite sparkling waters, which is a dash water or something like that. Or just a nice non-alcoholic drink. And then it'll be like, if by magic, my brain's kind of like, I don't really want that drink anymore. I realized that quenching of that first has actually just solved the problem. And your brain is just such a feeble thing. It's so funny.
It is. And it really goes to show that like whether you call it like a craving or urge or a desire, like it's a 20-minute feeling, you know what I mean? Like it will pass. And so many times, like the deeper emotions, like what you did in that moment is you stopped, you assessed, you asked yourself, okay, why am I wanting this? Like what happened with my day? Was it stressful? You know, you're processing, like you really are processing. You're not reaching just like, let's numb real quick. Right. And I think in that way, you really start to become more in tune with your feelings and your needs. And in that moment you needed like just something to, maybe slow down, but it doesn't have to have ethanol in it, and that worked. I'll have sometimes my clients will do something like that. Maybe they'll go on a walk or even they'll hop in the shower. Like I love water therapy, especially like most people don't necessarily have a sauna or something like intense in their house, but like just hopping in a shower, one, you're in this environment where you're probably not used to drinking in it. And two, it's the most like comforting feeling in the world to just be enveloped by this hot water. Whatever was stressing them out, it just like, and they get out of the shower, they don't want to drink anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like, I honestly say that when you go alcohol free or you just take a break, it's really a process of self-discovery. Like you're learning how to actually read your emotions and your body. And instead of just going straight to, whatever quick coping mechanism, you're actually processing, you're nurturing, you're listening. And sometimes those emotions are really needed, like even the negative ones. So for example, you feel stressed every single day because your boss is overbearing and there's no boundaries at work and you're getting underpaid. You're not supposed to numb that every day. Like maybe that's some signals you need to be listening to make some changes.
Yeah, that's such a good point is, if you are using alcohol, if you're really honest with yourself as a kind of band-aid, you know that things just aren't improving. And until you really kind of face up to the real issues, and let's face it, you're going to be able to face up to it far better if you've got more energy, if you've got more mental clarity. So it's just, it does always come back on this podcast. I find it always comes back to self-awareness and knowing your limits and knowing, I'm guessing like the people that do your 8-week program, even if they do go back to being a light drinker or however you talk about it, I'm guessing they tend to just really pull it back from where they were. What are the typical things that happen after the 8 weeks?
I think that's what's so cool about taking a break is that like, obviously, like we're talking a lot about this survival brain. Like survival brain does not like the word forever. It gets terrified with that word. And I think a lot of times that's how alcohol has been positioned. Either you drink or you quit, right? And you have to decide to quit forever. And it's very scary. And most people are not ready to make that decision. But the break from alcohol is like, no, I'm just taking a break. Like I'm really learning about myself. And so what happens though during that time is, especially if you're working on your mindset around drinking too, you're not just willpowering your way through that break. You're just not drinking. You're actually working on, why do I like to drink, right? Like when did I start associating alcohol with fun? Why did I associate with confidence? Are any of those things true? For example, I'm an introvert and I grew up really shy. So I thought alcohol literally was the secret to confidence. But when I really thought about it, when I really evaluated it, that wasn't true at all, right? Alcohol actually embarrassed me, right? Alcohol made me think like, do I have wine teeth? Like, did I say something out of character? It got me more insecure over time. I wasn't more confident. I had to learn how to socialize without it. And that was like a muscle that I had to work out that I've never worked out before. But it's kind of like public speaking, right? Like most of us are a little terrified of it, but when you start having to do it more often and more often, you build the capability and the skill. So I built the competence over, socializing without alcohol. So you do this whole process. You're not just taking a break, right? Like you're really just deciphering this relationship you have with it. And what ends up happening, I think, is you evolve into a type of person who takes care of their emotional needs in different ways, right? You understand yourself. If you've come to learn that maybe there is a part of your life you're unfulfilled with or unhappy with, you have now the agency and the confidence to actually make those shifts, whether it's starting a new career or maybe looking for a new relationship or whatever it is, right? So what ends up happening is like you really start designing a life that's way more suited to your desires and your real internal wants and needs. And so alcohol really just starts becoming the smaller part of in the rearview mirror. And so I have definitely people who like go back to it, and it's so interesting. They'll go back and they'll be like, you know what? I didn't really enjoy this. And so there's never any shame or judgment or like stigma attached to like starting to drink again. It's like, let's just use this as another awareness process. Like, did you actually enjoy it? Because when I took my break and then I drank again in February, I didn't. And I needed to learn that lesson that firmly, I really don't enjoy this experience whatsoever. And so it can be really a good learning tool. And then, whether you want to drink occasionally or whatever, like I think once you really disrupt your habits, at least the habits and the reflex aren't in control. Because now if you feel stressed, oh, I know I can do all this stuff. If I feel happy and excited and I want to celebrate, I can do all this stuff. Like I learned how to do these other rituals and take care of my emotional needs in different ways. So I think like, yes, you can definitely change your relationship with alcohol with a break and might go back to, drinking occasionally or whatever that looks like. But as long as like you keep doing the self-discovery work, like you'll be in check because you're always listening to yourself. If
so
you
wake
up after
occasional drinking can be a success, providing that you have the full self-awareness around what you're doing and that what are your boundaries, knowing, and obviously this is part of the conundrum, isn't it? Because it is a gateway to like, who has one glass of nice wine? Like seriously, like let's be honest, like like that's the interesting thing though, actually, like because I can have like a typical evening. If I'm having like a few drinks, it would be a non-alcoholic drink, and then it will potentially be if I've wanted like a craft beer or something. But I can have just the one and be good with that, and then I'll have a free spirit drink, the one that I mentioned. But if it was wine, no, that's not happening. But yeah, I think because that's part of it as well. Is like the type of drink that you're having, and there's all these intrinsic, I can't say the word, but different types of like strategies towards it. But I think you can overthink it as well, can't you? I mean, I think personally it comes down to being really clear on the effects and what you value. To be really blunt, like I do value energy, clarity of mind, time. I really value time because if you have more energy, you have more time, right? And there's nothing worse, like you said, than feeling groggy on a Monday morning or when you're starting the week. And I personally love what I do. I love my business. I want to serve people. And if I'm going into the week feeling like I had a few too many over the weekend, it's a horrible feeling, And so that is enough pain for me to push me towards, keeping the units really low. And that's something that I've learned just really in the last few years. It's been quite a learning curve because, like I say to a lot of our guests, I do feel like with health and wellness these days, we are swimming against the tide a lot. There's so many millions and millions of pounds of budget that's pushed us into eating more sugar, eating more processed food, drinking more alcohol. It's no surprise that diabetes, alcohol consumption, all of these things are at their highest for many years, because it's just so embedded in our culture. But yeah, I guess it's just knowing yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the break, right? Because it actually allows you to have this blank canvas and really just rediscover what that is. And then what you decide to do after that, like everyone has their own autonomy. And I think even if you're trying not to drink and you like have, you do drink, like, okay, you learn from it. Like, I think we attach way too much shame and like way too much stigma to this idea of like, oh, I drink, you know what I mean? It's like, you made a choice in that moment. You can choose differently the next day. It's really not that big of a deal. But like personally, like I had to kind of come to terms with it, why I chose. It's a unique choice for me. It's unique to my personality, but I chose to be alcohol free. It's because like I knew exactly how I felt as a drinker. There were no books getting written as a drinker. There were no businesses getting launched as a drinker. Like there was just, I knew what it felt like. And I remember feeling so good. And I actually had this occasion where I was going to choose between having a beer that night. I was going to allow myself, right? I wasn't like under restriction. It was either having a beer that night or continuing on this path. And I looked at that beer and I was like, you know what? I've had you like 3,000 times before in my life. I've been there. I've done that. I've never seen what happens when I go on this path. And I really wanted to just see what I was capable of without this toxin in my life. And instead of living a life where I'm conforming to other people's expectations of me, I decided to live a rebellious life and really be exceptional and really let my full potential shine. And to me, like that's my deeper why. That's why I continue to be alcohol free. But everyone's going to arrive at different conclusions or different meanings or different ways that they like reevaluate it. But I think once you like really do the work of changing like the thought process around their relationship with alcohol, they've actually studied that around 80% of people who do that, they just kind of don't want to go back. Or if they do, again, it's just very occasional type drinking. It's not the regularity of like, this is what I do every single week, week after week after week type of a thing. So definitely very open and stuff. And my book will kind of guide people through different options. Like once they're through the 8 weeks.
So is that what the book does? It kind of just takes you through that process. This is Euphoric, by the way, for the listeners.
Yeah. And there's a US version that's like swirly and colorful. And then this is the UK version. I don't know if you're using the video, but it's called Euphoric in the UK, an 8-week plan to ditch alcohol and reclaim your life. And really, so the book will go over all the benefits you'll receive of taking a break from alcohol, from the body, the mind, and the soul. So you'll just get really excited to experience it yourself. And then it'll guide you through that 8-week plan. And as you're doing that, you're changing your beliefs around alcohol. You're changing how you see it, how you take care of yourself. But then it also is guiding you towards the end of rediscovering, well, what really makes you feel alive? Because it's not about, I don't care what people drink at the end of the day. It's not about alcohol to me. It's about removing the one thing that doesn't serve you and giving yourself this beautiful space to really rediscover what lights you up, what gives you passion and sense of purpose. And so there'll be activities towards the end of the book to really start determining what that is, like starting new things, trying a new hobby. And a lot of times people find a deeper purpose essentially in helping other people. I mean, that's why you do what you do. You know what I mean? Like we get so much aliveness when we are literally using the things we've learned or the challenges we've overcome to help the person behind us.
Yeah, I think what you just said there though was absolute gold. Is not even forgetting about the word alcohol. Like forget about that label. I mean, if you think about just nutrition and nourishment for your body, just like one of the things that we have to encourage our members to do a lot is experiment with their food, because people get very complacent with their recipes and their foods as well, particularly when they first join us. We'll give them all the recipes and the meal plans and the guides. And a lot of it, is stuff that are like, oh God, that looks like a lot of work, or that looks different, or I'm not used to that. And we're like, yeah, that's, to change, you have to change to change your body and your health. You have to make some changes, unfortunately. But you know what, it's worth just treating it like an experiment, like making it fun and exciting. And I wonder what would happen if, even just being willing to ask that question. And I wonder what would happen if I choose this food, just like I wonder what would happen if I choose this drink instead of this drink. It doesn't have to be about alcohol. It can just be about, I'm just making a different choice and seeing what would happen. And so you're losing that stigma and identity around, oh, have I got a problem, or is this a real issue? And because we really do, like people, I've coached clients and they beat themselves up so much about having, oh God, I had a bottle or 2 bottles of wine at the weekend. I said that I wouldn't. I'm such a bad person. Why do I do it, Matt? And it's a tricky one because as a coach, you obviously want to help them get through that, and you want it to, but I think that's a really good way of coming at it is just forget about the whole idea to some extent of it, trying to go non-alcoholic and just trying to think about just how can I improve my well-being, just put less pressure on yourself, I guess.
Yes. And I love that so much, because I think we put way too much blame and way too much, like, we just feel like failures, especially when you're actually trying to drink less, or you're trying to like be healthier.
Yeah.
And you don't go according to the exact plan or the exact promise you had for yourself. Like, it's just this huge recrimination game the next day, and they've proven that actually makes it worse, because what do you do in that low state? You want to go for comfort in that low state. And then the comfort is the same thing that, caused you to be in the low state in the first place. So it's just this like cycle. If we just like really were, I think, a little bit more experimental, like, I had this response last night. Okay. Like, what happened? Like, I decipher it a little bit. Okay. I learned some lessons for next time. Like, we just add to our wisdom. We add to our intellectual understanding and emotional understanding of ourselves every single day. And we're not going to choose right every single day. Like, I happen to be alcohol free, but the number of nights that I choose TV over like doing something a little bit more stimulating with my time, more than I'd like to count, right? Like, I'm not perfect, right? But like, I can use my self-awareness to kind of know that, first of all, and just be like, okay, that's okay for some seasons in my life, but I know I can make shifts. I'm okay to change, and it's okay to not be perfect all the time either.
Yeah. And I think it's what life comes down to, isn't it? Just make sure now and again you are challenging yourself, and you're not getting too complacent with your day-to-day, week-to-week habits, pushing yourself though, that little bit out of your comfort zone. I think that's, no matter what age you are, I think it's, it's part of being human, isn't it? It's one of the things that we should always be working towards, for self-mastery. No, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and where to get your book? And you have your own podcast as well, don't you, Catherine?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Euphoric the Podcast. And if you're interested in getting the book, it is available in the UK, as I said. So you can go to www.euphoricbook.com, and then you can just click the retailer that is for the UK, and you'll get it there. Also my website is euphoricaf.com. So there you'll find, information about coaching if you're interested in that, my programs, my podcasts, some blog posts and stuff like that, just to learn more. And honestly, sometimes I say like the first step is to take a break. I actually think there's a step before that. The step before that is to just start thinking about this. We literally grew up in a society that has pushed alcohol on us. It's like a rite of passage when we're younger, and then it's embedded in our culture our whole entire lives. So it's kind of has to take like this shift of this one kind of thinking and open it up to a different kind of thinking. And the first place to start with that is literally just to lean into more information. So if you found anything interesting we had to say here, read a book, right? I'd love it if it was mine, right? But there's other books out there as well. Listen to a podcast. Just kind of start digging your toe a little bit more into this other way of looking at alcohol, other than just the black and white, like we either drink and we're normal, or we're alcoholics and we're, sober. Like, there's other ways of looking at it, and it might really open your eyes, and you don't even have to take a break yet. You're just learning.
Well, and to sort of finish this up, that's why we're here, isn't it? Because, I think that's the benefit of having these types of conversations and putting these types of episodes out into the world is, let's face it, like you said earlier, it is a sort of a bit of a taboo topic, about how much you drink. And maybe 10 years ago, if you asked someone, or you even brought up the conversation, they'd sort of tell you where to go. But nowadays, I think this is a good thing, is talking about it, making sure the information is there, so that when you are having a drink or going out for drinks, you have the full knowledge about what you're doing, and you can make those decisions and face the consequences knowingly.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for just all your brilliant questions. I had such a good time today.
No, thank you. What we'll do is I'll put those links in the show notes for people to find your book and find out more about you and your podcast. And great conversation. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.